Undisputed was a game that, as a boxing fan, I was beyond hyped for, so as soon as the early access code came into our office, I was the first one to jump at the opportunity to review the game. And after a few hours of playing the game, I felt underwhelmed. Now let me make this clear, this game is being released in an early access state, so by no means is this a finished game. First off, let's talk about the good things about the game. The character models are absolutely stunning, with a level of detail that is truly impressive, even for the legendary fighters. There are 50 fighters available in the early access version, and each one looks exactly like their real life counterparts. I'm excited to see more fighters added to the roster as the game continues to develop. They have done a fantastic job securing the licenses of the biggest fighters. The arenas seem extremely detailed, and there's a good variety available from day one. It was pretty cool to be able to relive the Fury vs Wilder match in a huge arena and then transition into fighting Eddie Hall with Muhammad Ali in a training gym. So credit to the devs for this nice touch. The interaction scene with your coach in between rounds was pretty cool and something different, but I found that after a few matches, you soon start to skip the scene to get to the action. Right, with the good parts discussed, we now move on to the not so good, which, as I said before, in fairness is to be expected with an early access state game. When loading into a match, you're kind of taken aback by the level of detail of the fighters in the ring walks, and for myself personally, I was expecting a big moment where each fighter would show their personality. Think back to Fury vs Wilder, for example. The ring walk was a huge moment, showing the fighters' personalities, and in some instances, according to Wilder, can even win or lose a fight. Maybe it was wrong of me to expect a big moment during this cutscene for a heavyweight title fight, but being underwhelmed was a common feeling I encountered throughout playing Undisputed. The ring walk-ins felt like they had no depth. It's the same generic quick flash of a fighter every time, and really misses out on one of the big components of a main event fight night. Listen, I'm not expecting Sweet Caroline to be belted through my speakers due to copyright, I get that, but at least recreate something similar. Atmosphere is everything. Speaking of atmosphere, there are multiple times when you can tell it's just an audience track being played instead of actually feeling the atmosphere of the crowd. A typical example of this is after a win, when the crowd via the audio are going absolutely wild, but when you look in the background, you literally just see the crowd standing there.
World saw that shot. They probably even heard it.
Moving on to the actual fight mechanics and dynamics, the game certainly shows a lot of promise, with a wide variety of defensive options to get your Floyd Mayweather on and leave your opponent punching thin air as you bob and weave away. The defensive elements I was super impressed with, but again, I really felt underwhelmed with the attacking options for your fighters. You're given the basic options of a jab, straight, hooks and uppercuts to the head and body, but it stops there. Yes, these are the bread and butter of boxing, but even simple things such as an overhand hook or straight didn't seem to be on offer, and after a while, you just seem to be throwing the same punches over and over. I feel like a recent UFC game would have more boxing combinations than this actual boxing game itself. Maybe it's just me, but I feel like combinations don't really flow well either. Jab to straight was fine, but whenever I tried to follow it up with a left hook and a straight, it just didn't feel smooth. The constant shaking and spinning of the camera is really off-putting, and it makes it difficult to gauge range. As someone who boxes as a counterpuncher when I play these types of games, I try to maintain a distance, but this made it feel really difficult when the camera is constantly spinning and therefore changes the angle of the punches. There is an option to turn it off, but I think if they took a bit more time to refine this element, it could be an interesting dynamic. It just reminds me of when I first started learning to edit and found the handheld effect and put it on full strength on everything. When an opponent is rocked, the distance at which they stumble backwards makes it really difficult to actually be able to follow up with a decent combo. I'd like it if there was an additional animation that allowed you to break out of your traditional stance and literally chase your opponent down when rocked as you would in real life. The knockdown minigame is interesting, but I really do not like how no matter where the fighter gets put down in the ring, they are always countered in the center of the ring. On more than one occasion, I'd knock a fighter down on the ropes and actually be really impressed with the physics of the knockdown, only to go to a generic transition where suddenly the fighter has been transported into the middle of the ring. Then the same generic scene is shown when your opponent gets up from being knocked down in the exact same position with the exact same movements, regardless of the severity of the knockdown. So we don't get to relive any of those classic Tyson Fury get-up moments. This is a game that's claiming to be the most realistic boxing sim in the world, so minor details like this really remind you that you are in fact playing a game. Speaking of generic cutscenes, a massive thing I really did not like is that after a 12-round slobber knocker, when the fighter fails to answer the 10 count, it literally just goes to raising the winner's hand with the ref. There's no instant gratification or shock factor, like I've just won a huge title fight and I'm now the best in the world. Show me going wild and running over to the top rope to celebrate. There were a few glitchy moments, but in fairness, you sort of expect that in an early access state. I only found one game-breaking glitch during my playtime, which seemed to be when I played as Muhammad Ali and threw a hook. I would crumple to the floor and the game would freeze in the loading screen, forcing me to kill the game. This specific scenario was not a one-off, as I could replicate it, so hopefully that's fixed soon. Another weird glitch was Deontay Wilder, where throwing a body hook felt like I was waiting for a Fable 4 release date, taking a ridiculously long time. Well, I'm hoping it's a glitch anyway, and it's not just the devs disrespecting Wilder's speed. My whole time playing the game, no matter how clean the punches were, I could never land a knockout punch, only ever knockdowns. Hey, who knows, it might be user error, but I was never able to achieve the satisfying flash knockout. In fights, I'd be completely dominating, and suddenly the commentary team would have extremely poor timing, as you could have knocked your opponent down 3 times in a round, and when you're sat in the stall in between rounds, you'll hear lines such as, "Ooh, an extremely close round," and I don't think I've seen a tighter round before.
Who's winning this fight right now? I have no idea.
Again, it just reminds you that you're playing a game and it takes you out of that immersive experience. All in all, Undisputed has a lot of potential, but as an early access game, it's clear that there's still a lot of work to be done. The character models and arenas are impressive, but the ring walks lack atmosphere and need to be improved. The fighting mechanics show promise, but the attacking options and camera work needs to be refined. I am excited to see how the game develops, but it's hard to recommend in its current state. I don't want to give a score for the game at the moment, as I don't think it's fair score in an early access state, but what I will say is, as it is currently, if the game is more than £20 on Steam until the full release, I can't really recommend it other than to save money later down the line. If you enjoyed this video, you should check out this video, where I show you every fighter available on day 1 in Undisputed.